Hi friends, today we are needle felting jack-o'-lanterns. In this video, we will build on our needle felting of pumpkins to create these expressive little jack-o'-lantern faces. As you would expect, we are going to build our understructures with core wool and decorate them with some lovely wool batting using our MC1 this time on the outside. But we'll also show you some fun techniques you can use to carve your own needle felted pumpkin into a festive jack-o'-lantern. Then we'll add a little personality with some locks as hair and a curly witch's hat. This is a fun project for beginners, no matter what your skill level, and it's going to actually help you build your techniques. So jump right in and play with us a little bit today. The supplies we need are super simple, and today we're going to be working with the fibers included in our kit for needle felting a jack-o'-lantern. We're going to start with core wool, and this is how much you get in the kit, which is 4 ounces, so you can make 2 big ones of my size or a bunch of smaller ones. Then we'll be using our wool batting in the MC1 variety for the outside coverings. Today I'm going to be working with mandarin orange, a little bit of pumpkin spice and orange cream, and for our hat, the beautiful black onyx. We'll also be working with our wild vine house dyed locks. We hope you enjoy working with these. Some felt sheets. You'll need a 4" by 4" wool felt sheet for each jack-o'-lantern of this style. A needle felt pad is important. This is our 17 by 17 wow mat, which I love working on. The felting needles are simple. I'm using 42 triangles, both in a cluster and single, a 38 star spiral, and then I have a little cluster of 40 triangles here. So see what you like. You'll need a chenille stem for each one. I like using a pencil to help me draw on the face and scissors to cut your felt, so fabric scissors, and one for cutting our pumpkin. We do have a supply kit for this project, and if you grab that, then you can also get these handy dandy diagrams, which might help guide you on an inspired face and also guide you with the size for the witch's hat base and the shape of your pumpkins. The kit includes 4 ounces of core wool to make 2 large jack-o'-lanterns. We'll divide our wool in half. So unfurl your wool, divide it in half, and go ahead and divide it in half again so that you have 4 equal balls of wool. Those are each 1 ounce and will help guide you as you build your jack-o'-lantern to the same shape as ours. For the core of our jack-o'-lantern, we're going to use 1½ of these. To make our needle felted jack-o'-lanterns, we're building on the same foundation where we made our needle felted pumpkin. So if you need to reference that video, go ahead. We are going to needle felt a nice firm ball about the size of your fist. Where this project differs from the needle felting of Fairytale Pumpkin is in making more of an egg shape. We are going to make an egg shape by building layers of fiber onto the top of our needle felted ball. Pull off several tufts of core wool and stack them one on top of the other, pile them right on top of your ball, and needle felt them down. We'll continue this process, allowing each layer to get slightly smaller, and that will help build up more of a conical top. Just make sure to needle felt each layer nice and firm. Repeat this process and continue needle felting until you have what looks like a nice dinosaur egg as a base for your needle felted jack-o'-lantern. We'll cover our core shape with our outer color. In this case, we're using MC1 Mandarin. I like to peel the bat's thickness to make it nice and thin. Start with a piece that will allow you to wrap around the circumference of the ball with a slight overlap on each edge. Begin needle felting at one end of that strip and just work your way from one end to the other, continuing to smooth out air and compact the fibers as you go. I like to use a multi-needle tool or a little grouping of felting needles and use fine needles because our underneath base is already firm, and that's going to create a nice foundation for a beautiful smooth layer, especially since our fiber is so smooth. Once you have everything from that first strip tacked down, then all we need to do is patch in the areas of core wool that are still exposed. And if you're working with our MC1 fiber, you'll see just how easy this is. The most important thing is just to cover the white and then begin needle felting from the center, working your way out. That'll give you a nice smooth blend. Once your shape is uniformly covered, there's no wrinkles or bumps or lumps, then it's time to move on to the next step. We are going to outline a face onto our jack-o'-lantern. I'm just doing this freehand from the vision I have in my head, and you can, cut out shapes if you want or whatever, but just draw on the face of your pumpkin with a pencil. Once you have your shapes outlined, it's time to get cutting. Find a nice sharp pair of scissors. I'm using the Fiskars number 5 because they have a great point. Dig them into your felt and cut along the lines that you drew. Take your time knowing that you're cutting through multiple layers at a time, and you might notice that your surface color comes off first. That's no problem. Just go back at it, continue cutting, and we're going to extract these little bits just as if you were actually carving a pumpkin. Doing the eyes and the nose is a little more challenging because they're so small. Just do your best to start in one corner and work your way to the next corner of each shape. After you've cut out your shapes, go in and needle felt those areas to make them more compact and to make all of your lines nice and sharp where you can. Don't worry if you still see some of the pencil marks. You can either trim it away with your scissors, or we're going to be covering it in with some other dyed fibers, so see if that works for yours. On the eyes and the nose, go back in with your felting needle, and you might choose a coarse felting needle at this point and make each of the points nice and sharp, so tops and corners. In the mouth, we begin filling in with an accent color. In this case, we're using like our pumpkin spice. You might try a cinnamon brown or a charcoal, whatever you have, to make it nice and dark inside. If you want yours lit, you might use yellow. Once the accent color of the mouth is filled in, we're using our MC1 orange cream to represent what the inside of the pumpkin looks like. Using our fine needles, we're going to needle felt that in place. You'll find it easiest to go from corner to corner, point to point. Sometimes it's easier to just start in that point, twist and twirl to get it all wrapped around, tack it in, go to the next point of the mouth, and then you might even cut or break the fiber before doing the bottom parts of the mouth. Sometimes it's easier to break the fiber and just work from point to point than to try and bend around corners, but you just do what works for you. For the eyes and the nose, we repeat the same thing we did in the mouth. We're going to use our accent color dark as the background, and then we're going to outline the areas that we've trimmed with our orange cream so that it looks like the insides of a regular pumpkin. I find in the eye sockets that sometimes I do have to go back over them over and over, but just do it so that you have a nice open area. Accent your corners and get your shapes as nice and sharp as you want them for your jack-o'-lantern. Our needle felted jack-o'-lantern has quite an expression. He's a pretty funny guy. And now we're going to add just a few lines to represent rinds on the outside of the pumpkin. Different from the Fairytale Pumpkin, these are just subtle lines. We're pulling off the same brown that we used in the mouth, making it rather sparse, and just tracing lines down the sides and the back of the pumpkin and being a little more sparse on the face so that we don't overpower the expressions that we've carved out of the wool. So whatever works for you, this is what our guy looks like. A little funny, a little lopsided. just how I like my jack-o'-lanterns. Now you can give your jack-o'-lantern a stem like we did in the Fairytale Pumpkins, but I decided to give mine a witch hat. And we are using our black wool felt, cutting out a large circle. We have that in the PDF, and we're going to build our hat right on top of this wool felt. Using a chenille stem, I like to fold it uneven, and you can make the cone of your hat as long or short as you want. This little loop is where we're going to grab onto our fiber, and that's going to help us build the cone of our hat. So start with a long, narrow strip, pass it through this loop, pinch the loop down, twist it a little bit tighter, and then working in a very narrow strip, pull the wool tightly against the chenille stem and wrap it down the length. The key here is to hold that wool very tight around the chenille stem. We're only using the part that's folded over, that builds the cone of our hat. So when you get to the base, wrap extra layers there and then work your way back up. Look, this is a lot of the same method as we used to build the stem. The only difference is we're going to continue building up the base so that it forms a nice cone. I always work this in layers, so when you get to the end of that strip, needle felt it so that it's nicely laying down and creating a great shape, and then just continue to add layers mostly toward the base of that shape. Remember to needle felt up through the bottom so that you start to make a flat area, and to needle felt it firmly throughout the whole process. A fine needle works really well for this if you're willing to be patient, because you'll also end up without a bunch of needle lines in the final product. Our cone is really taking shape, and now it's time to attach it to the brim of our hat. In order to do that, we're just going to fold our brim in half and then in half again so that we have a nice little area. Use our scissors to clip a tiny bit or poke a hole. I clip a bit and then I poke a hole and pass the chenille stem right through there. That's going to give us a nice attachment, and once we have our cone seated onto the brim, we're just going to needle felt it right to the felt. If you are using our wool felt, you'll see that this binds really, really well. So first, attach it just by needle felting straight down, and anywhere you have extra gaps, just fill in with a little more wool. We're also going to put a little bit of wool underneath the brim and start tacking it into the cone, but leave it a little unfelted because we're going to use this loose fiber to help attach our hat to our jack-o'-lantern. It's ideal to get all the shape and all the refinements of your hat before it's attached to your jack-o'-lantern, because that's where you have all of the control. Once you're happy with it, position it on your jack-o'-lantern. Make sure you like the shape of the cone and the overall size, and when you're happy with that overall size, we can finish him off. Clip off the excess chenille stem and let's attach some hair or locks or whatever you're using on your guy. We are using our wild vine locks as witch hair. You could use anything you like, but this really just spoke to me. I like to use a coarse or medium coarse felting needle for attaching the locks to the pumpkin. So try your 38 star spiral on this section. We don't need a lot of volume under there. We just need those locks attached. So notice we're not folding them backwards like we did on the Fairytale Pumpkin. We're just needle felting them down. And our witch isn't going to have a lot of hair. They're really just front locks because we're kind of goofy that way. You might lightly tack a few of the locks to the outside of the pumpkin, unless you just want them sticking out like a crazy clown wig. That's an option as well. With our locks in place, it's time to attach our hat. A little tuft of wool right on top of your jack-o'-lantern will serve as glue to bind the two pieces together. So put a tiny tuft in there, and then we're going to needle felt right down through the cone of the hat that you needle felted into the top of the jack-o'-lantern. Again, we're using a medium or semi-coarse felting needle in our 38 star spiral to do that. Make sure your hat is firmly attached to your pumpkin, and if the cone misshapes, just go back and add more wool to finish it off. And then anywhere you want to put on a final touch, extra locks or anything, now's the time to add the final touches to your needle felted jack-o'-lantern. You might choose to give the top of your hat a little crook or a little twirl, but this needle felted jack-o'-lantern is ready for display. You can set him out for Halloween, put him on your desk. Anywhere he is, he's going to bring smiles. Thank you for needle felting this little jack-o'-lantern with us. If you enjoyed this project, we hope you'll leave a comment down below. Let us know your favorite takeaway or maybe your unique ideas that you're going to try out. And if you're looking for more fall needle felting projects, we've got them. Check out our fall needle felting playlist. We also have a wet felting one too. But for your next projects, you might try our needle felting a Fairytale Pumpkin, maybe our fantasy owls, or maybe even a fall gnome. We'll see you next time, y'all. Until then, have fun and happy felting.